Okay, so now we're looking at the our reference, right? Our values are under control. Nothing's overcommitted. But here's where we need to start finishing or working towards developing the values further where they need to be, right? And as you can still see that the background has to be deepened all around a little bit. Right, so I'm going to go all over the drawing and glide my pencil. I am aiming for the hot spots being where the paper's showing through, where there's no value. Obviously, I'm respecting the highlights and so forth, but I am putting in a little bit more value all around to deepen the drawing. Okay, and I'm working with my medium pencil. It's time to sharpen the pencil again a little bit. I'm going to change the pencil angle slightly. And the values are very deep over here still, so it sets up the drama from left to right. As you can see, this takes a lot of work. You want to have your drawing designed properly. If you're going to spend all this time, right? Get into the shadow area. Okay, and this is a very important shadow area along there, right? Nice and crisp right along there. Crisp and dark. There's a little bit of a jog there. Following direction of the volume. Gliding the pencil along the surface so as not to overcommit the values. You know, as bright as the skull is, there's quite a bit of value here in the upper range of values. So you want to, there's actually a shadow core right there. That'll help define it. You can see how dark it has to get under here to create that contrast there, which is very subtle. Changing line direction to get that value going. Okay, starting to feel it here. Oh yeah. Let's work on. Nice and sharp in these areas. Smooth. Okay. Glass is coming out beautiful. And there's a line right on the back side, sharp line that defines that outside edge. Okay. This line in the foreground of the glass is fairly sharp. Okay. In between those two highlights. Okay. And let's work on the apple a little bit. Nice sharp contrast in values along the front edge, or pulling the values. And what you want to do is you want to have a piece of paper to rest on if you're going to use your precision grip, so as not to smudge the drawing underneath with your palm, with your hand. Okay? And okay. And the apple is very, very dark right in that area. Okay, and it's actually darker than the shadow, so we want to make that distinction, but we will also want to get that shadow where it has to be in terms of value. All right, it starts pretty high up there. And see how sharp the shadow is closer to the apple, and then out here it's soft. Okay, so we want to duplicate that graphic effect. You know, it's funny the way the brain and the eye are used to seeing things a certain way, and that's what we're doing. We're creating these patterns of values that the brain is used to seeing. So, information in. Okay. Right. Some subtle values here. Okay. Really deepen it back here. It's real dark back here. but it's not black, you know, so you want to manage that. And you can see how this background can still be a little darker. Okay, so let's add the shadow of the glass. Okay. Now we're working towards finishing the drawing, sharpening things up, deepening the values where they need to be. You can see how I want to create that light to dark, right? And these edges are sharp, right? So you want to make them as sharp as possible. Changing my direction a little bit. Aiming for the hot spots. That shadow area of the glass is quite large, right? Because the glass is way up in the air and it's thrown down this soft, subtle shape. Right? It dissipates into a value here that's yeah, nice. Now I'm starting to force the light into the drawing, right? This reflection's a little bit strong. Definitely emphasize that shadow core right along in there. There's a little bit of light that hits that stem that I'm gonna use my kneaded eraser to just draw like a very thin highlight edge there. All right. You can see how detailed you can get. All right, and there's that little highlight on the other side. Okay. Exaggerating the shadow values on the skull a little bit. To add a little drama. Notice how I draw around the highlights. I can always open up some of these highlights with a very, very sharp kneaded eraser. Okay. And I'm deepening the values again, adjusting the values constantly. Okay. Nice. Right, so I can see how the background is still a little bright. Aiming for the hot spots. Very subtle convergence of values there. Okay. And you can see the drawing is really starting to key in now as I adjust the values ever so slightly. Wine glass shadows sort of darker in the foreground here. Sharpen things up where they need to be in the light. Right. I'm going to sharpen that shadow coming off the front of the skull there, and then it gets soft moving away. Okay. And if you need to open up some values, you got to pounce it. Yeah, sharpen it up. Forcing the shadow area a little bit. And this is the highlight that's closest to the light. Pretty important, so I'm going to open it up. Okay. Okay. All right. There's some subtle folds and things, and I could tweak this thing. Right. Notice how the darkest parts that get put in are put in at last, at the end. The dark, we're always working from light to dark. Right? The whole shadow side of the skull. Adjusting the values. Okay. There we go. Okay. And so here we are. I think that there's places that can be worked on here. Closing up some of these gaps in the values, right? Some highlights there that you want to keep open. Okay. We spoke about this very, very dark area. Okay, there we go. Alrighty, now we can just maybe sharpen things up a little bit, clean things up a little bit, right? Some smudging that went on, resting my arm on it, and just sharpening up some of these highlights, right, closest to the light. Let's see, very important. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And that's it. Okay, so looking at our reference, I could develop these values more in the background here, push the drama, and that's it. We've achieved our goal, right? We designed the drawing properly. There's a little bit of a story here, the skull looking at the wine, the alcohol, and the symbol of life here with the apple. Okay, so then now we have the light source coming from the left to right. We have a sense of light that is coming through the drawing, right? With these shadows that are set up here beautifully, right? And we worked slowly from light to dark, right? We worked around the highlights, and we achieved the goal that we were looking for. We were looking for that light structure, the presence of light coming through and bathing the subject matter. Okay, very good. And now that's a medium complexity still life. Okay. That's good. And there we are. All done. Right? I mean, I could sit here and hit some of these highlights and things, but that concludes this demonstration, right?